Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the TV shows, I watch all the true crime, all the reality shows, all the trending shows on all the streaming apps, and then I come over here and I talk about them. And today I want to talk about a new true crime documentary. I believe it just came out yesterday, and it's called Family Secrets: The Disappearance of Alissa Turney, and I watched it last night. I believe that it's like an hour and 25 minutes long. Hold on just a second. It is on Peacock. It's called Family Secrets: The Disappearance of Alissa Turney, and it is an hour and 25 minutes long, and it says, viral sensation Sarah Turney examines her tumultuous childhood to reconstruct the truth about her suspicions that her dad killed her sister Alissa. Now, before I get into this, I just want to say, my reaction to this is simply a reaction to watching a documentary. This is not a case that I have followed for a long time. I do not know the background history of this story other than what I watched last night in the documentary. I haven't listened to the podcast. This is just a reaction to the documentary. So feel free to educate me or anybody else in the comment section about things that I don't know, or that things that may have come out recently. Please let me know in the comment section below. Feel free to do that. But I do want to make that clear, because whenever I do true crime, people will say things like, oh, did you not know this, or did you not know that? Sometimes the documentaries that I watch, I do know a lot about. Other times, when I watch a documentary, I don't know anything about it. For those of you that do not know, I have a true crime book club. I think we're going on our 5th year, and I run it with my good friend Mel. Hey Mel, how are you? The link is below for the Facebook group. All you have to do is go over there and answer 3 questions, and then you can join the group. Every month we pick a book, and we pick a true crime book and a true crime documentary to read and watch. I just on my BookTube channel yesterday announced the books and the documentary for November, and this is actually the true crime documentary that we are watching for November. And Mel lives in Arizona, which is where this case takes place, and she said she's followed this case from the very beginning. So I don't really know much about this case at all, other than what I watched last night in the documentary. So for those of you that don't know anything about this case, I want to get in here. I want to read a little bit about it to you from the Wikipedia page. Hold on just a second. I had it all pulled up, and now it's not pulling up. Where is it at? Okay, so let me pull this up. Why is it not pulling up now? I had it just pulled up. Okay, why is it the Alissa Turney not pulling up on the Wikipedia? I had this all up. Okay, Alissa Turney. Here it is, Wikipedia. So let me get in here really quick. Alissa Turney, born April 3rd, 1984, is a 17-year-old American girl who was last seen in the Phoenix, Arizona area on May 17th, 2001. That goes in the background. Alissa Marie Turney of Phoenix, Arizona, was born in 1984 to parents Barbara Farner and Stephen Strom. Alissa's parents divorced when she was 3 years old, and her mother, Barbara, married a man named Michael Turney. Michael, who had 3 children from a previous relationship, 3 sons, adopted Alissa and her older brother, John. Shortly after they married, Michael and Barbara had a child of their own, Sarah, who is the narrator of the documentary. Barbara died of cancer when Alissa was 9 years old, leaving Michael to raise all 6 children as a single parent. At the time of her disappearance, Alissa lived with her adoptive father, Michael Turney, and half-sister, Sarah Turney. The other children were adults and no longer lived at home. She worked at the fast food restaurant Jack in the Box and had a boyfriend named John Lackman. Disappearance. May 17, 2001 was the last day of Alissa's junior year at Paradise Valley High School. According to her stepfather, Michael, he dropped her off in the morning as usual, then picked her up around lunchtime. Allegedly, they had an argument and she stormed off. Later, he and Sarah found a note in her bedroom written by Alissa claiming that she was running away to California. However, she had left her cell phone and other personal items behind, which the police and other people found very strange. That night, Alissa had plans to go to a party but did not attend. On May 24th, 2001, Turney claimed that he received a phone call from a California, I think it was Riverside, California, from a California number where Alissa swore at him before hanging up. In 2008, Turney claimed that Alissa was killed by 2 assassins from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and that she was buried in Desert Center, California. Investigation. Turney filed a missing persons report on May 17, 2001, but in the immediate days following Alissa's disappearance, police did not suspect foul play, and no police investigation took place because he had reported that he got the phone call, all that. So that gave him an alibi. In 2006, self-proclaimed serial killer Thomas Albert Heimer told a prison guard that he had killed Alissa. He had been in prison since 2000. This is not in the documentary. that he had been in prison, I don't think it is, since 2003 for an unrelated murder. However, when Phoenix police questioned Heimer, they ultimately determined that he had not had any contact with Alissa, and he admitted he might have confused her with a different victim. I don't believe that's in the documentary. In 2008, the case was reopened. In December 2008, detectives told Sarah that her father was their main suspect. Simultaneously, authorities were raiding the Turney home, where they seized more than 24 improvised explosive devices, 19 firearms, 2 homemade silencers, and a van full of gasoline. They also found a manifesto outlining his plans for a rampage against the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers building in Phoenix. Michael Turney was arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced to 10 years in jail. He was released in August of 2017. So the documentary is short and it's concise. I think it's very, very well done. I think that it pays homage to Alissa as a victim. It shows a lot about her. Her friends from back then are a huge part of the documentary. In me reading true crime or watching true crime documentaries, it's always important to me that they pay homage to the victim. I don't want to just hear about the murder and the murderer and things like that. I want to hear a lot about the victim's story. I think that is important to paint a well-rounded picture of who the victim was, because I think that's really ultimately what the story is about. And because we can talk all we want to know about the killer and all that kind of stuff, and I think sometimes our fascination is with that. But without the victims, there would be no serial killers, no killers like this. He's not a serial killer, but there would be no killer and things like that. So this documentary is about, the first part of it is about Alissa's disappearance. And it goes in and it shows that Michael has videotaped the majority of their childhood. And that at times even had like cameras set up around the house, around the perimeter, so he could see the outside of the house, the garage. He even had cameras set up in the heating vents that were looking into the living room. He also taped phone calls. So any incoming or outgoing phone calls that came in, he taped. You know, a lot of people were like saying that it was that he was watching very closely because he was worried about our kids. I think it comes across as extremely weird, okay? There's protectiveness and then there's weirdness, and it crosses a line. So Sarah, at first, when her father becomes like basically the main suspect, Sarah, she is like her dad's biggest defender. She's his sister, or Alissa's sister. She's like his biggest defender. She's like, my dad had no part to do with this murder whatsoever. I don't even know that she's murdered. And then, like, through the years, she starts going back and watching the videotapes that her dad filmed, and she starts seeing kind of like a consistent pattern of weirdness that might point to a history of SA with her father towards Alissa. And in fact, Alissa has come out at times and told people, including this woman that her father was involved with, that she had sex with him and things like that, and then said to other people and told her boyfriend. She had alleged to several other people that her father had SA'd her. In fact, her father had made her sign by a notary republic, or notary, what's it called? A notary or whatever, that you have to sign the whole thing, you know, that this contract basically that she do initial and sign that said that she would never come out. I mean, it was the weirdest contract ever, that she wouldn't have sex, that she wouldn't be bisexual, it said on there, that she wouldn't do illicit drugs, all these different things. And one of them on there was that she would never come out with allegations towards her dad of SA. And in fact, it came out later that he called Child Protection Services and said that if she ever made those allegations, that was her just trying to basically get revenge on him because she wasn't getting her way at home. And I'm like, I'm like, this is so strange to me, all these things adding up, right? He maintains his innocence to this day. In fact, they film him at the end of it. We'll get to that in just a second. So Sarah, in watching back all these videotapes, she starts thinking, my dad had to have been the one that did this. There's never been any leads about her missing or her being a runaway. Her dad later came out and said she was probably killed by this, electrical group and whatever, and that there's no signs pointing to that, and that he was really the only person that would have had motive to do it. She also comes out in this note that they found. In the first line of the note, it says, to her dad and Sarah, it says basically, when you guys dropped me off, Dad and Sarah dropped me off at school this morning, and Sarah's like, I wasn't there when he dropped her off at school. I wasn't part of that. And so then she also says, and I took $300 from you. Sarah puts it together, and she's like, because there's this note that they find when she goes missing, and she puts it together, and she's like, I wasn't there that morning when dropped her off at school. She had threatened to leave a bunch of times, Alissa had. And the $300 had been paid back to her dad a long time ago. So she's like, I think this is a previous note that he had found and kept and used for this moment. Okay? All the pieces kind of add up to point in the direction of her father. So then Sarah, her mind kind of changes and she starts telling her friends and her partner and stuff. She's like, I think that my dad did it. And everybody's like, okay, mind blown. Like, we've been thinking that forever. You're the only one that didn't because you had your dad's back. So then she starts working with the police. Okay? And then they indict her father on second-degree murder charges towards her sister. The problem is they have no body, okay? And then they go to court and all this kind of stuff, but they're not allowed to bring any of the SA allegations into the courtroom. So it's this very muted court trial towards her father, not really painting a true narrative or true history of what that home environment was really like that could have possibly led to the murder. So there's a huge absence of this. I mean, one of the friends that's interviewed of Alissa even says, I don't even know why I'm here. Why am I even here? Because I can't even tell the true story of what's going on. So he ends up getting an acquittal from that trial, which means, and you know, there's double jeopardy, which means he can, even if new evidence came out, the prosecutor says, or the police officer says that even if the detective, I think, even if new evidence would come out that directly pointed to him murdering Alissa, they can't even try him for it. They could try him for other things. They could try him for like obstruction of justice, or they could try him for, you know, disposal of the body and things like that, or, but whatever. But they could not try him for murder at all because he's already been acquitted of that, which is like the way they get around that in this case is like so bizarre from this like Rule 20 or whatever. So then he's basically free. So then Sarah calls him up as part of this documentary and she wants to sit down and ask him all these questions. This scene to me was like, she went in with agenda. She wanted to answer all these questions. It felt very edited to me, this part. I feel like there was a lot that was left out in the edit. I don't know. So he comes in and he sits down and talks to her and they're filming the whole thing. He's filming the whole thing on his phone and she's firing him these questions. Now you have to remember, she hasn't talked to her dad in 5 years. And the 5 years before that, when she talked to her dad, was when she asked him questions about Alissa, and basically what he says is, I'll give you a deathbed confessional, but nothing will really change. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I'm telling you now. He contends that he is innocent in this, and he never did anything towards Alissa. He never, like, you know, SA'd her. He never did anything about, you know, whatever, that she just took up and left, and that somebody possibly took her life, is really basically what he holds to. I mean, he holds to it through the whole thing. So there's this confrontation where she asks him like 5 questions. She's like, and then you can ask me questions at the end. What's interesting about this part is that, you know, she uses the words gaslighting and narcissist and manipulation, but in this moment, it's kind of scary because, like, at first, when I'm watching it, I'm like, she's firing these questions at him, and he's like, Sarah, why are you coming at me so hard? And like, in that moment, I'm, like, watching it, I'm kind of like, maybe he didn't do it. Like, maybe he didn't have anything to do with it. And you can tell her that she's getting more and more heated, right? Because she's like, because he asks her before on the phone call, when she calls and asks him to do the interview, he's like, can I have a hug? And she's like, what? Like, no, this is to sit down. And he's like, well, even a handshake. And she's like, if you want a hug or a handshake from me, you need to get honest with me. You need to tell me some answers. Well, he's not admitting to anything. And now she's got the video proof, the letter, friends that have spoken. I mean, she told her friends for years she was scared of her dad. He won't even admit to that she was afraid of him. On and on and on. Basically still painting a really negative picture of Sarah, or of Alissa. Then starts painting a picture of Sarah that's badly and says your siblings don't want anything to do with you, on and on and on. What's interesting about this scene, and what's so scary about this scene is, when you're watching it, like up to that point, I was like 100% convinced that this man did it. When you're watching that scene, he turns it back on her, and you can tell she starts getting heated, right? I mean, we have so thrown around that word gaslighting that it almost has no meaning anymore in today's society. This moment was a perfect example of gaslighting. I mean, in its textual form of what it means. This man gaslit the shit out of her. I mean, I literally, like in that moment, you could tell she felt like she was going crazy. And he just continued to turn it on her. He's like, Sarah, is this all for views? Like, Sarah, are you using your dead sister for views? Like, I mean, because she has this podcast now. So Sarah started this podcast and she interviewed all these people. She has since turned it not just to be about Alissa, but she's trying to find other missing people that have gone missing as well, which is fantastic. This scene was so scary to me because watching it, I started to doubt all the evidence that was laying in front of me, you know, that they had shown in the previous hour and 15 minutes of the documentary. Imagine being his daughter and having questioned this your whole life and having your dad sit across to you and talk to you that way in the one moment that he doesn't say anything like, I am so sorry about how our relationship fell apart or whatever. I mean, he's so angry in this moment. But the anger is smirking, nasty manipulation. It is so scary in that moment. I mean, in that moment, I was 100% convinced that allegedly he was guilty of this. I was like, oh, and because she even says to him, you are acquitted. That now is the time to tell me the truth. There's nothing that can happen. So she finally at the end gets up and she walks out. She's like, you can talk to the producers, I'm done. And that's kind of how it ends. And then it shows her, you know, having talked to, or having her do Now Turner podcast, which apparently has done really, really well. It's interesting because like when she showed her very first TikTok that she ever did, where she says like, it's like the trauma thing where you talk about, and she's like, my dad killed my sister and whatever. I was like, I feel like I've seen that TikTok, and I hardly ever go on TikTok. I feel like somebody sent that to me because they know I have an interest in true crime like years ago. But I thought it was fantastically done. I feel so bad for this Sarah girl. Like, I love anybody that takes their story and turns their wounds into wisdom, and she has turned her wounds into wisdom by helping other missing people, and it's fantastic. But when you watch this, it is so baffling to see this man. I mean, he is so manipulative of her, and you leave it being like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, I feel pretty sure of what happened, but the fact that he is so manipulative at 70 plus years old, almost 80 years old, is really, really scary that he's still continuing to this and doesn't even care about his relationship with her daughter. In fact, uses the siblings' relationships against her in that moment. And it's like she has no answers. He's not even, like, it's one thing to say, I didn't do it. I feel so bad about this, Sarah. Like, I want the answers to what happened to your sister, too. Like, I want to know what happened. Like, I'll work with you in finding that out. None of that. No compassion whatsoever. Basically just turns the whole thing on her. And that was for me the moment, because that was when she said, I'll walk out of here. I'll never speak your name again. You'll never see my kids again, or my kids ever, and I'm done with you. And she does. She walks out. And I just was like, it's so sad that you never get any ending to this. You know, people talk about closure. I don't know that closure offers a lot of people anything, but I do think that answers in knowing what happened, give people some kind of closure to something that they're seeking out knowing their entire life. Anyway, I thought it was really well done. I didn't know anything about this case. I'll be interested to see if more stuff comes out about it, but I mean, he was acquitted, so it's not like he could ever face charges for it, even if it did. Anyway, if you guys were followed the podcast, I would be really interested to know what you thought of the podcast in comparison to the documentary, because I am thinking about listening to the podcast, because I was very interested in this. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.